I had a privilege of working with the Native American community for almost 3 decades, living in Taos, New Mexico from like 1972 to 1990. In fact, the first time I worked with a camera was doing a documentary on Yellow Thunder Camp in the Black Hills of South Dakota in 1981. I didn't know I was going to be a documentarian, but that's the work that was thrust upon me. It was really the first work I had done in Indian country, was working with American Indian movement, working with Russ and John Trudell and different people back in the 60s and 70s. And what I really started to learn in my experience was the fun stuff and the really meaningful stuff was working with the elders, when you'd sit down with the camera and interview the grandmas and grandpas, and that's when the real rubber hit the road. And a lot of meaningful stuff was said. They had a lot of stories to tell and a lot of history, and no one was listening. And so I learned a lot, and unfortunately I learned a lot more than I was able to get out to other people. Doing documentaries and getting things done on Indian country was not easy for me. But I learned it was part of my life's work, helping people tell stories, people that didn't have access. For those who were represented, and that's why, call me crazy, but it's why I left New Mexico, my home for 2 decades, moved to Los Angeles to really get more experience in the entertainment industry. But it was really about helping indigenous communities. It's what our company, Earthstream Media, is about. You got the mainstream, you got the Earthstream. It's really about getting those stories out there, and with a little bent towards the environment and water, which I'm sure will be something we'll all have a lot to say about over the next 2 decades. But getting the stories about, that's what this story, An Unlikely Solution, as it's called, is about. The film explores the intersection of Native American e-commerce, which is about tribes and unrepresented tribes, remote tribes, people that don't have access to mainstream economy, through e-commerce and installment lending, intersecting in an unlikely fashion with American consumers across the country. The numbers are in the film, but there are a lot of them. There's a lot of tribes and a lot of tribal people that need help. There's a lot of consumers that need help. This film is about the nexus and the intersection of those 2 worlds coming together, and all that's involved. It's a unique partnership. It's created an innovative economic development lifeline for tribal governments while providing essential services for consumers that need their help. And consumers that I must say, and I learned a lot of, that don't really get a lot of help otherwise. We call it it was really an unlikely partnership. It's really what it really is not a partnership, it's a solution. It's really 2 different groups of people working on their own, servicing their own needs, and therefore helping each other solve. So that's where the title comes from. We traveled across the country. We were in Oklahoma, we were in Texas, we were in Los Angeles, we filmed up in Michigan. We've been up in Upper Lake, which is up in Northern California, and we interviewed consumers, and we interviewed to get the perspective of officials, tribal leaders, the consumers, and the people. I say we, my partner Ben, who's up there. I've worked with Ben for almost 20 years, and actually he went along with me on my first, when we went and documented the 20th anniversary of Wounded Knee. Was his first experience behind a camera, which was a bit of an eye-opener for him on Pine Ridge. Thanks to Sherry, all the tribal persons, the tribal chairpersons, from Sherry from Habematall Pomo of Upper Lake, John Schotten of Otoe, Missouri, James Williams of Blackview Desert, Band of Upper Lake Chippewa. They and their communities, they open it, they trusted us to tell their story, and we'll see how you like it. We take it very seriously, and I hope you see it in the film. Before we jump in, I want to acknowledge a friend of mine who, in production, one-time friend who I think of particularly, obviously, in this kind of project, someone who Ben and I worked with in training Native youth in Indian country, is Floyd Red Crow Westerman. You may know him as Chief Ten Bears in Dances with Wolves, or Uncle Ray on Walker, Texas Ranger. Those of you that know him for other things, I won't go into that. Anyway, Floyd was a dear friend and a mentor. When we started this project, Ben and I at a certain point had to dig down kind of deep and say, is this really the same message? Is this what I got into in the 70s and the 80s? What would Floyd think? And it is. It's about sovereignty, what it really gets down to. Once you understand this, it's the same thing that tribes have been fighting for, and the grandmas and the grandpas, and it's their right to exist, their inalienable rights as a nation to nation in existence on this continent. And another thing I learned, it's one thing I observed that always kind of stuck with me, is those that say don't know and those that know don't say. And I think it took me a long time to kind of understand that, but it's about the doing. And it's about the execution. And I think that's what you'll see in this film, that people are doing what they do. And in the meantime, outside of it, particularly in this kind of topic, in the news and in media, a lot of people who speak and talk and say a lot of things, they don't really know what's going on. They speak more than I think they doth understand. And hopefully this film looks at the balance and kind of changes the scale a little bit.